when I think of kratom, I think of head shops and vape stores, and it has a little bit of a sort of underground, sort of bad boy feel, but it really is a wonderful herb. Why do you think it's gotten such a sort of a bad rep in the herbal community, particularly?
It's funny because I actually have a slide that says, why does it have a bad rap?
it does, because when you think of kratom, you think of a poor man's heroin, maybe, or who knows, not like that. But I have to say, I've been to Kava Sutra in New York City recently, and I'll tell you, they also have kratom, and it really, I've had kava before, and I'm like, it's okay. The kava there is like, it's probably like the kratom between the high quality kratom you're getting and also the ones you get at the vape stores, which isn't that good. It was like night and day. I'm like, oh my God, this is kava. And like, you can, and like now I get it. And this is the kratom that I bought. I don't know if you know that brand at all, PCG. I don't know if it's good or I don't know if it's good or bad. It's Phuket City Green. So it's green. So tell me, there's a white kratom, there's green and red,
if you
right?
Want, we can start the
Why don't we start the slide? That'd be great. How's that? So, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay, so disclaimer.
I did put a disclaimer in there.
Okay.
Because obviously this is just from my personal research. It's intended just for info purposes. Shouldn't be substituted for medical advice by any means. And then obviously if you are taking medication, I just have to say, or any form of herbal therapy in conjunction, it's best to just check with somebody, whether it be your medical professional or a clinical herbalist that knows what they're doing, just to make sure that there's no interactions. Because I do believe that a lot of people do feel when they're taking herbal supplements that it's safe. And, even peppermint oil in high doses is toxic. So it's good to be aware of what's in it and what else you're taking. So that's my disclaimer. And so what I thought I would do is just kind of give a little overview of what kratom is, where it's found, and then we'll go into the particulars. And please feel free to stop me if you have questions. But what I'd like to do is just go through this, and then if there are questions, then hit them up at the end. Is that cool?
Awesome. Great.
Okay. All right, so what is kratom? So the Latin name is Mitragina speciosa, and some of the common names that you'll hear around the world, because in various indigenous cultures, it's known as Kikum, Tom, and then, several different names for exactly the same thing. It is in the coffee family, which is Rubiaceae, and it's an evergreen tree, and it's classified as an evergreen tree because the leaves don't fall off. It's indigenous to Southeast Asia. So as you can see on the map, that whole area, it loves that climate and it thrives. It's a very tall bush.
I have a quick question. Yeah. Does it grow anywhere else or just in Southeast Asia? Like, can you grow it in the United States or?
You can, but you would need the correct climate. I've seen people grow it successfully, like in Florida. I have a friend that does grow it down there. And then also, if you have like a greenhouse that can keep the temperate environment that it needs, you can grow it yourself. But predominantly, it loves that humid, temperate climate down in that area for it to effectively grow. And I've got a couple more pictures coming up so you can kind of see, but that little picture there is what the leaf looks like. And then it was first in the first herbal publication in 1839. So it does go back to some of the herbals in the 1800s. So it has been around even back then, even though it's been used for hundreds of years by the indigenous people for various things.
And I think we'll get to this later, but I find it interesting that, like, for instance, even in Thailand, even planting the tree was made illegal in 1943.
Yes.
Which is amazing to me, because it is such anyway. Is it still is it still the case there, or?
So I actually have a slide on that as well that will go through the timeline when we get to the legalities of everything. But next slide. So I did put in this slide because I think it's really important. I call it folk medicine, indigenous medicine. healers, everyone that used what's around them in their culture for healing. This is one of the herbs in that area of Southeast Asia that was used for hundreds of years before it became the big buzzword it is now. And what I found really interesting is during Vietnam, when the soldiers started returning, they brought some of the kratom back because when they were there, they would use it as tea for pain, and it's also a stimulant. And then also immigrants that came from that area to this country brought it back. So it's been gaining popularity for whatever reason in the last 10 years. It's really taken, hold in the, like you said, underground world. But back in the folk medicine indigenous uses, it was used for pain management, a mood booster, for fatigue, even diabetes and dysentery. And what the laborers in the fields who were picking various crops or doing whatever labor they were doing would do is take a piece of the leaf and just chew on it as a stimulant. And what's interesting in my research, some of the studies I've read, recent studies have shown that when you take kratom in a small quantity, it can act as a stimulant, whereas you take it in a higher quality, it'll get you into that euphoric state. And then a little bit higher, you're going to get into where you can actually help sleep if you have sleep disorders. So next slide. And so what is the buzz? What is the buzz right now? Like, why is it all popular? And the reason being is it's an excellent form of pain management. And I'm drinking a cup right now. And for the last couple of weeks, I have had a lot of pain. And this has been my go-to. And it's interesting because it's excellent for my migraines, but also anywhere in my body. And so I can personally attest to the effectiveness of it from my own personal experience. There are many studies and in many cultures, especially in Malaysia, that it's excellent with opioid withdrawal. And I'll go into the reasons why from a chemical aspect on that. But stress, it's extremely calming to the body. It is a mood enhancer, anti-inflammatory. And some of the studies I have read have shown that anti-inflammatory property with some of the constituents within the plants. And when I'm talking about constituents, I'm talking about the phytochemicals that would act upon the receptors in the human body to reduce the pain, reduce the inflammation. So it's also considered an aphrodisiac because it does give you a tingly sensation. Right now, my tongue is very numb and tingly, so I know that's when it's working for me. But it also relaxes the body. Okay, next slide.
Next slide. Oh, the red vein. Oh, sorry, red vein. Here we go.
Okay. And so when we're talking about the, red vein, white vein, green vein, there's various veins in the leaves. And it's important to note, and I have another slide to remind later on, that all these aren't different species. It's all kratom. And red vein, white vein, and green vein all grow on the same tree. However, when the leaves are picked, the red veins are higher in a particular constituent that will reduce pain. All of them reduce pain. It's sedating, calming. It helps sleep, and also opioid addiction. And so when we go to the next slide, it will show you a picture of white vein. And so the same thing, you've got a little white vein, but it's not a different tree. White vein can be on a tree with red vein. And I think that's where some misconceptions happen. I think people believe that a red vein is one tree, white vein, et cetera, but that's not the case. Again, they're all very good for pain relieving, but white vein actually is, it has more constituents in it that create a stimulating effect, gives you a bit of energy. So if one was out in the field and wanted that, extra boost to keep doing whatever they're doing, they would look for a leaf with a white vein and chew it, just actually chew it. It also increases concentration. So, and anyone who has ADD or focusing issues, the white vein is a great one to choose from. And this one also does give a euphoric sensation in higher doses. And it's just how the chemical constituents are in the leaf. And it's just the traits of these particular veins in the leaves that will give you those results and effects. Okay, next slide.
Green vein.
And green vein. So, and I did put like GVK because when you're searching on the internet or whatever and you're trying to order it, which we'll talk about later, you will see some of those abbreviations. So I just wanted to make that aware. But again, it's also a pain reliever. They're all pain relievers. They all help with the opioid addiction and withdrawal. And it's very calming. And it's just a mild stimulant. So you can mix these when we talk about the powders and preparation. So this is just a good idea of what each one does. And next slide. So you may have heard yellow vein. Yellow vein is becoming all the rage now, you know, how things go through cycles. And so again, another misconception is that, oh, this is a new, you know, kratom bush, you know, but it's actually not. It's just the way that the leaves were dried. And it could be a combination of all the leaves off the tree. It could be just the drying process. The leaves turn a little yellow if they're dried in the sun on certain things. But what it does is it's kind of like a hybrid of the red and white with a little various mixture of alkaloids. And so everyone's really been getting into this yellow vein, which you can actually just sort of kind of make yourself if you mix a little red with white. It's kind of the same alkaloids in the mix, but yellow vein is just done for you. All right, next slide. And this is just a reminder, and I picked that picture there so you can see at the top, you can see a leaf with a red vein, and right at the bottom, you can see a leaf with a white vein, same tree. And then I'm sure if we were actually there, we could see one with a green vein. So just a reminder that the trees contain all the veins. It's not separate trees. Next. And so for those who like the, you know, I'm not a scientist, but I do like to know how these things affect our body and what chemical constituents are in certain, you know, herbs that I'm taking or offering someone to take when they come to see me. This particular plant contains over 15 phytochemicals. The most predominant one, which I'm just going to focus on for this brief because I could go in for hours on everything, is mitragynine, and that is the primary alkaloid. And when we're talking about alkaloids, it's the phytochemicals which, you know, affect us physiologically with various effects. This particular one, it stimulates our nerve receptors. So this alkaloid here is going to affect us in various ways as far as stimulation, sedative. It's also an antitussive, believe it or not. So it's excellent for coughs. It helps if someone's got a chronic cough, it will kind of slow that down. So when I'm making certain teas or tinctures, if someone's coughing, I will throw a little bit in because it also helps with fever. It's been used by the indigenous peoples for who knows, millennia, for fevers and all sorts of things that you would consider if you were not feeling very well. And so what it does is this particular constituent binds to the receptors that opioids bind to kill the pain. And if you go to the next slide, I'll go into a little bit of detail. I don't want to do too much because it can get really, really, you know, scientific when you go to this level. But just to give an overview, you know, and a visual of how this is affecting us when the opioids activate the opioid receptors on the nerve cells. There's a little picture over to the right that kind of shows it. The top one is before, and then the second one is after. It shows you all of that, you know, activity going on. And it belongs to a family of proteins, which are known as G protein coupled receptors, GPCRs. And so when we're taking these herbally, it does affect us in a similar way. However, it doesn't have that, you know, the association with overdose and that, you know, all the bad things that you would consider and that are affecting society today with the opioid crisis. And so because this particular plant has these constituents in it, it has been extremely effective in several studies, one in particular out of Malaysia, to help people get off opioids successfully. So next slide. And so a lot of times, you know, everyone will say, well, there's so many, what should I use? And this chart right here, you can just Google and find Kratom strains chart. This one is really easy. I thought it was really great because it shows you, you know, if you're looking for more energy, more sedative, more painkiller, it will show you the different names that would be the best blend for you. But overall, when you're looking for something that is going to be sedative, you go with the red. Energy, you go with the white. If you want a little combination of all, then you go with the green. And it's also important when you're looking at the names of where they're coming from, the different leaves will vary in constituent content depending on where they were grown. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit, where you can tell on your Kratom, you know, what it's containing as far as alkaloids content. All right, next.
There we go. 1 second. Yep.
All right, so to help decode Kratom, because it can get quite confusing, especially when you see all these names, and I think people are just making up names at this point. But various names do not mean it comes from that particular Kratom tree. So red Indo, that's not a red Indo tree. Basically what it's saying is it's a red vein leaves that were chosen, just all red vein, from a tree originating from Indonesia. And when I say that, it doesn't mean it has to have been grown in Indonesia, but the tree may have came from Indonesia and cultivated somewhere else. So they call it a red Indo. And there's many different names that once you get out there and looking for Kratom, you'll see. Mengda is a blend of various veins. And I've seen a lot of people say, oh, you know, I want Mengda, but it's not a particular tree. It's just a blend of all the veins. And then depending on where it's from, it could say Indo-Mengda, you know, it will tell you where it's coming from based off where the plant was originally grown. And again, all veins can grow on one tree. The leaves are harvested from one tree, as you can see the picture over to the right. And what happens is once they put them in the basket, they'll bring them back and they'll separate them. They'll separate the red, the green, and the white. And that's how it's processed. And then they all go into one big drying thing, separated so that they can be powdered later. And the red color, because a lot of people think, oh, red vein is red because it has a red vein. And that's actually not the case. The red color appears during the drying and the curing. So next. And I mentioned earlier that my first experience was at a Kratom bar in Tampa, Florida. It's actually really cool. And I have some pictures after this. But it's like a little speakeasy. And you've got to, know the passcode to get in. There's a wall behind it, books, and you got to press the right book to get in. And so that's pictures of some of the Kratom. I sat there for a while, and the entire week I was there, took various sips because it was absolutely amazing. But when someone says, well, how can I get started? I always say, just take a sip, make some tea. So the one that I would recommend starting with is a red vein. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel chill. And it has an immediate effect within, about 10 minutes or so. You'll start to feel your tongue get a little tingly within like 5 minutes or so. And, that's when, it's working. 3 to 5 grams to start. That is, the sweet spot when you're first starting out, just to test the waters, because, you never know. Everyone's different depending on weight, height, age, even gender. Plays a factor in how it's going to affect. And also if if you haven't eaten anything, so if you take it on an empty stomach, versus if you just had something to, to eat for dinner or whatnot, it's going to be different. It's going to take a little bit longer. What I always tell people is to purchase a variety pack, and all the suggested vendors that I recommend at the end, they sell variety packs. And then what I did is I just started drinking various veins to see which one I liked the best, how it made my body feel, how it took away the pain. And I did it at the same time of day, because even the time of day affects how it's going to affect you. So if I'm looking for something that I want to feel good and just chill, I'm going to take about at least 5 grams, and I'm going to do it when I want to feel chill, not midday, unless you need it, unless that's what you want.
Kris, a quick question. Are you suggest taking in hot water like a tea or a cold beverage?
Oh yeah, I'll talk about some preparation.
Okay.
Methods. I've got some slides that has some pictures on it to show how to do it, and then I'll just show you what I did here.
Okay.
But again, it's very important to note that depending on supplier and the location that it was grown in and harvested in, it can promote different effects to the body. So if you find a company that is legit working for you and it's called Mangda, and then you get Mangda from someone else and it doesn't do the same thing, just with anything else, even like St. John's wort or whatever, where elevation, location, all affects all those constituents that are in the plants. The amount of sun, the way it was dried, how it was stored. So when you do find a supplier that you like, I always just say to stick with it, because it will vary depending on different vendors. All right, next. And so this should be the next slide. I think we missed. We did
take a sip.
No, it was right before take a sip.
So
right, this is
yeah,
that's okay. That's the Kava Kratom bar in Tampa, Florida. Nice. And so you can, that's all they serve. Probably one of the best setups for Kava and Kratom that I have seen. Well, I should say in the East Coast of the United States. It was just really funky. It was really cool. And I really liked their blends that they used. Now I've kind of developed a couple of their techniques. They use flavored syrups in theirs because it can be a little bitter. So if you want like a funky effect, the one that I really liked was a blackberry syrup that I dropped a little bit in, and it was excellent. Just to give you a kind of ideas to play with. Right. And so if you want to go back to the slide with the caution. So there's always, with anything, like I mentioned, even peppermint oil can be toxic if taken incorrectly. And with anything, really. So you just want to be careful. There's certain things you don't want to do when you're taking this. When you're drinking Kratom, don't drink any alcohol. If you're on any other pain meds or any, pain, mood altering medication, obviously opioids, you don't want to be taking all of it at the same time. Start with 3 grams, work your way up. It's going to depend on your age, weight, and also I put mental and physical state, because if you're not having a good day, or if you're hyped up, depending on how you are feeling physically and mentally at that time, can also affect how the results are going to be when you have some.
Kris, I have a question about the alcohol. You say don't drink alcohol, but is there a particular reason? Is because of the liver, or just
absolutely. It can have some hepatotoxic effects, but also the interactions, depending on how much you have, can produce some weird, what do you call them? Side effects. I will say I have I have not followed my advice at times, and nothing happened to me. However, that doesn't mean it won't happen to you, especially if
right.
someone has a liver issue or has been taking medications that are harmful to the liver. And so it's just something to think about if you are you've got any liver issues, especially if someone is recovering from alcoholism and that kind of thing. You just want to watch that. And a lot of people have told me that they have actually drank Kratom that helped them through weaning themselves off alcohol. So it was a great transition. So you always have something to drink, but also feel really good.
And that's interesting, because the paleo diet, which is pretty popular now, Kratom is now a suggested drink. So a lot of people following the paleo diet are actually using Kratom instead of alcohol, which I found interesting. So
yeah, no, and it makes sense, especially if you take it in a small dose and for as a stimulant, helps you. And it's excellent because it's an antitussive. It actually helps, give you that breath. Opens up the respiratory area. Right. Next slide.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
All right. So this is where I wanted to touch just, because a lot of people, it's illegal, and in some states it actually is, but just to give like a really quick overview, and if something interests you, there's so much on this that you could go down a rabbit hole reading about it. But the big things, in 1943, it was illegal to plant the trees in Thailand because it was being overused, and they believed that it was being abused. And then back in 79, they classified it as, a narcotic. And in the same classification as cannabis. In 2016, in the United States, the DEA actually classified it as Schedule 1 with reports of poisoning and death, which is really interesting because I have some statistics on the next slide we'll talk about. And then in 2018, FDA came in because now it's getting really popular. And they're like, all right, we're warning against this. This is not a good thing to do. We've had deaths. We've had poisonings. And despite all the evidence that it actually helps people transition from addiction, and the more and more research that's being done, they're showing that it is an excellent tool if done correctly. In fact, one of the studies that I read from 2020 showed a year follow-up after of using Kratom, and they did not have the cravings for the opioids that they used to have, and they were very successful. And that's a year follow-up, which I found really, really cool. There was a high success rate on that. So in 2020, the Thai government actually relented and decided to legalize it for medicinal use because they tried in 2004, 2009, 2013. And what happens is there were so many people using it in the area to, treat pain, to not choose an alternative that was, worse for them. Everyone banded together and said no. And there were a couple of letters that were sent from various state departments as well that helped with that based off of legal representation of some individuals. But nonetheless, 2020, last year, it finally became legalized again. So that was just an interesting thing because I hope that kind of paves the way moving over to our end of the world. And if you go to the next slide, it will show you in the United States where Kratom is actually illegal. So the green states is the dark green is where there's no restrictions on it. So right now, Massachusetts, we're good to go, right? So, but if you look at New York is orange. So what they're doing is they're looking at legislation. So there is, some policies going forth to try to either ban it or restrict it. So when you said, you reminded me of the Kava Kratom bar in New York, I was like, oh, because this is the latest report as of 2021. So that does have some legislation in there that's looking to ban it. So hopefully that doesn't happen. The red ones are where it's banned. So right now you're looking at Vermont, Rhode Island, Arkansas, Alabama, Indiana, Wisconsin. And then the light green is there's again some legislation was put forth, but it failed. They were trying to get it banned. So when you see the little red dots, there's some in California and in Colorado and other states, that means a city particularly banned it. And which is really interesting because when I was doing my research, I was like, how many deaths from Kratom happened? I was like, I want to know, like, how many deaths? Because we talk about how many people have died from overdose, right? And needle use and everything else that is affecting us right now. And from 2016, there was less than 100 deaths reported from Kratom use. And that was because 9 out of 10 of those were using other substances with it, like opioids and other pain medication and other drugs. And so it wasn't the Kratom that did it. It was the combination of all the other abuses that were going on. And so when you look at 2016 alone, right? So the Kratom deaths were from 2016 to now 100, right? Then you look at 2016 by itself, and there was 46,000 deaths from opioid use by itself. So, I mean, it begs to question, why are they banning it? Like, really? And I think we could probably all answer that in our heads, why, without discussing it in depth for obvious reasons. But it works. It works. And if you go to the next slide.
But another issue is, most of those deaths also had other, right? I mean, and the people were using other drugs as well, correct?
Yeah.
So,
That's what I was just saying. It's 9 out of 10 of them were using something else. Another
right. And it's very rare just for Kratom alone to kill someone, right? I mean, what would you have to do? You'd have to take a lot of it and probably...
You would have to take a considerable amount. When we're talking like, 3 to 5 milligrams or grams, you would have to take about like 2,000,
right?
2 to 3,000 grams, a day for a little bit, in order to even give you something to be concerned about.
Well, I mean, people have died from coffee. I mean,
absolutely.
There was a case where someone was working in a coffee shop and they drank 10 espressos, and they had a heart attack. So, I mean, anyway.
I'm sure other health issues they probably had going along with that as well. So there's so many things that play, a role in that. And when you look at 100 in the last, 5 years versus the 50,000 plus a year that die from overdoses, it shouldn't even be warranting, a ban. But that's just my personal opinion. So why does it have a bad rap? We talked about opioid receptors earlier. So anything with the word opioid right now is getting a bad rap because of everything going on. So, opioid receptors, it does the same thing as heroin and morphine. It's got to be bad, right? Well, no, actually not, because our own body produces its own opioids. Endorphins, the things that help us, get over our pain. Our body produces opioids on its own. And so Kratom does not repress respiration. It actually helps respiration, like versus heroin and morphine. And heroin and morphine deaths usually occur from when respiration is affected. And so when you look at the different ways that it affects it different. It may bind to those receptors, but it affects it in a different way, so that not only does it bind to knock out the pain, but it doesn't give you the adverse effects that heroin or morphine would give you. Is it still addictive? Anything's addictive, chocolate, whatever, right? But research has shown that to withdraw from Kratom addiction is super easy to do, unlike heroin or morphine. So yes, it does bind to the receptors. It does it similarly. Does it do it exactly like heroin and morphine? Absolutely, not. But it does give you those effects on a milder level to help. And when we talk about, withdrawal, to help someone knock addiction in a safer way and get the same effect and reduce the pain in the body. And so it's that opioid connection that gives it the bad rap, unfortunately. And on a positive note, a lot more research is being done. So I think when some, people don't know things, they fear it. Or if they're told, oh, someone died, bad, without the research and the scientific, evidence to back it up, it's just going to proliferate. And I think that's what's happening. And so luckily we've got a lot of people looking at this as an alternative. And so if you do a scholarly search, you'll find a ton of research on this that is proving to be positive. And so next slide, I think we're coming to the good part of preparation and how to actually take it. So you can buy the powder. Again, I'll give you some recommendations of where to buy. It comes in powder, and you can take it several different ways. You can do it in tea. I have my tea right now. I think, Scott, you're drinking your tea. You can buy a little capsule kit, which I show down in the bottom right. You can put your powder in capsules. You can take it in capsule form if you don't want to drink a tea. I find that drinking it via tea acts a little bit quicker for me. It just when you take it in capsule, it takes a little bit longer because it's got to go through that digestion, and then you've got enzymes that kill a couple of things. So tea for me is the way to go. And I use the reusable tea bags you can see in that picture there. So you can just put the powder in, let it soak, be on your way. But you don't even have to do that. You can actually take a cup of hot water, put a good teaspoon in, and just stir it. And some people actually prefer it that way. I don't like the gritty taste, but it is what it is. Some people love it. And that's called, they call that a slurry, when you just take a scoop and put it in the water.
And you actually drink the powder as well, right?
Yeah. So when you put the powder in a slurry form, is you just have a cup of hot water, take a teaspoon scoop, throw it in, and then you stir it. And when you see the kratom kind of floating at the top, that's when you chug it down.
Huh. Okay.
You can put some in a shake, sprinkle on food. But honestly, I find taking it in tea form to be quite effective and easy to do. And like I said, a couple of those flavored syrups, and you can ice it. It's an excellent little cooler. Put a little spritz in there, a little seltzer, and it's kind of like having a drink because you get that body, relaxation, and it tastes delicious, and you feel like you're actually having a cocktail if you make it look, really pretty and stuff. So that's a couple of ways that you can take it. Next slide. Where can you purchase it now that we know what to do? Yes, as you mentioned, convenience stores, smoke shops, vape shops. And I actually was in, I better not say where I was because you can narrow down where I got this. But I was curious because I wanted to experiment with getting some at a smoke shop. So I did buy some Thai Kratom. And then I bought them in different forms. So I bought a red and I bought a green just to see in these packets how they affect me in comparison to the stuff I have been buying. I have not tried these yet because I just bought them, but I'll let you know. But the one thing that I look for is if it's a good package, it will tell you the alkaloid content on it. And so I was curious, and I picked it up, and sure enough, it did have the alkaloid content on here. And it shows that it would vary to about 1.1%, which is around the 5 gram if you're doing a little scoop with a teaspoon. The one that I do really like, and I have been using for a while, is from, and I put the link up here, the super speciosa. And this one has actual constituent content. Like if you were to go to a dispensary and it's going to show you, the content, THC, CBD content, they'll tell you right on the package. And I really like that. And this one's a little bit higher on the constituent content. But what I do like about this brand is they come prepackaged, so you don't have to worry about if you're getting the right amount. It's already done for you. So if you want just a mild effect, 1 bag, a little bit more, 2 bags, because it's about 3 to 5 grams. And then another really good one that I've used before is Easy Kratom. And those have been around for a while and pretty reputable. So those two are my personal favorite. I'm not endorsing them. I don't have any kickbacks or whatever. It's just for my personal usage, which I found to be good. And I'll report back to you, Scott, on
okay, cool.
my vape shop.
On the vape shop ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Let me come back. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that might have been the last slide.
I'm going to put that in the chat. Cool.
So, yeah, I mean, that's
that
really,
was fascinating. Mm-hmm.
That's, in a nutshell, real quick. But I think really to just give it if I think the best thing to do is if you do have a kava or kratom bar somewhere close is to go and have someone make it for you. Otherwise, it's really easy to do.
Yeah. I unfortunately in New York, I don't think they actually serve a kratom. They sell it, but they don't serve it. They only serve the kava. Unfortunately,
okay.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, what about a kratom tincture? Does it work as a tincture?
So that's a good question. And when I was doing my research so as you probably know, certain alkaloids have to be extracted with certain things.
Right.
Some are water soluble to pull it out. Some need the alcohol, to kind of pull what you're looking for out. And what this particular one found is that it's more of a water soluble. So that's why the tea works good. You could do a cold infusion. So like if you wanted to leave it in a cold jar of water for about 24 hours, or a hot infusion, you leave it in some hot water and then just let it cool for 24 hours. It's going to get those constituents into the water, and then you can keep it chilled. Especially summer's coming. I like it over ice with a little flavoring, a little garnish. But tincture, I did try it just to see, because I like to know these things, and I will say it didn't really do anything for me.
Interesting. But, certain herbs tincture well, certain herbs don't, unfortunately. Yeah. It seems